to Kate Anjou's Book Reviews, the place where we shine a spotlight on indie books and their authors. This month's focus is the book Choosing Fate, and that is by J.N. Stein, who is a fantastic author of werewolf romantasy. Choosing Fate is the third book of the Stone Sister series. If you are unfamiliar with this series, then I urge you to go and check it out. This episode, whilst it is spoiler free for Choosing Fate, it does allude to the previous two books and it does spoil certain events that happen within those. So if you are wanting to read this book or you think you might want to read this book, I thoroughly encourage you to go onto Amazon or Kindle Unlimited, get yourself a copy, catch up, and then come back. But for those who have read it, or maybe for those who just don't mind spoilers, come along on our wonderful journey. So as always with these things, I like to start with the characters. I think that characters are really key to driving a narrative. I know that sounds obvious, but to me, if I don't like a character or if I can't understand a character, then I tap out. So I like to start with this because for me, it's one of the most important things. So in this story, we are following Saph. Now, each story of this series focuses on a different sister of the sisterhood. First one was Daya, second one was Emmy, and now we're following Saph. Now, she has just underwent a huge trauma. She's lost her life partner, Nathan, who sacrificed him to save the alpha of the Red Mountain Pack, Asher. Now, normally with these books, the sisters that we've followed so far, they start off in relatively good places mentally. It's normally quite light. It's normally quite breezy at the beginning. And, you know, as the stories progress, more and more turmoil gets introduced. With this one, however, Saph is absolutely just swarmed by her grief. She is not a very nice character to begin with. We don't like her very much. And it's quite a contrast to how we've seen her in the previous books, where she's always been so optimistic. She's been so happy. She's always found joy in things. And so to see her so angry, lashing out at her sisters, not wanting any help, just drowning herself in alcohol, not taking joy in any of the things that she used to, is really quite shocking, not just for the people around her, but for us as readers as well. Now, one of the great things about J.N. Stein is that she writes very genuinely. She doesn't sort of pander to her audiences and try and sort of give them what they want. She stays very true to her characters, what they're experiencing, and just generally like how life is. This is the great thing about Stein's work, is that even though it's fantastical and we're in this sort of werewolf reality where there are witches and vampires and all kinds, she still keeps things very grounded and human. So even though all these fantastical things are going on, the core of it all is something that we actually can all very much relate to. Everyone has experienced loss. Everyone has experienced death of some kind, and the hole that leaves. And if you haven't, fair play. But most people have. And, you know, just that loss of sense of control, just feeling like everything is falling apart, is really captured so well here. And what we get to see is Saph's struggles with it, but also the people around her and how that struggle ripples out, especially with her sisters. And it actually takes people who aren't so close to her to help pull her out of this funk that she's in. And that is not to say that it's an easy journey. Stein does not let up on us as readers or on Saph, bless her. And she is up and down, constantly battling with herself, feeling guilt, feeling remorse, feeling anguish and, you know, desperation, and all of these things that come with the grief process. And because we've known because we've known Saph in previous books, like we're right there with everyone else, that we want to see her back. And it's really beautiful the way that it all kind of turns out. And I'm not going to say anything else because A, I don't want to spoil anything, but B, I also just want you guys to just go on this journey with Saph as well. because Nathan was a really wonderful character, and you know, it is very sad when he dies, especially because he sacrifices himself. Now, what Saph doesn't realize at first is that she is actually fated to be mated with Asher, the Alpha, who Nathan sacrificed himself for. Now, within this world, there are fated mates. For those who don't know, fated mates is when you have two souls that are destined to be together. Now, in these books, they are predestined by the moon goddess, who is essentially the overriding deity in this universe. And fated mates for a very long time, for about 30 years, were not a thing, because they got wiped out by something called the Fated Plague. And so in book 1 of this series, we start to see fated mates come back in, but it's a very nervy thing. People aren't entirely sure how to deal with it. They've never seen it before in their lifetime, you know, so it's a very, you'd think in theory it should be a very happy thing, but it's actually very turbulent. And the struggle that Saph has with her new feelings towards Asher and the guilt that comes from that, not only because he was the one that Nathan saved and therefore died, but just generally feeling something new for someone else when you're still amidst the grief of the loss of a love is very, very hard. And we see all of that turmoil as well. But Asher is a wonderful character. He is one of the most interesting characters of this series. He has a lot of depth, a lot of layers. He has things going on that we don't know about, and we do find out about in this book, and I'm not going to say anything, but it leads to some really wonderful, wholesome, heartfelt moments. He's funny. He's not like any other alpha we've seen, nor apparently many other people within this world have seen. Like, he's got pink hair. He's got like cupcake tattoos. He plays guitar. He's a very creative guy. He's sober. There is no drinking or drugs on site on their land. And he's just this complete sort of almost like a puppy. But then he can like hit hard when he needs to, you know? So he's not to be underestimated. And I think some of the other characters do underestimate him. So it's really interesting to see what happens and how that all kind of unfolds. We also get to know some side characters a little bit more that got introduced in the previous books. There's a pair of witch hybrids who are twins, and we get to learn a bit more about their story, their powers. They have a much bigger focus in this story as well, and it's an interesting dynamic because they have so far been attacking the packs, and now there's almost maybe kind of sort of, but not really, like a truce and alliance, but they kind of, the circumstances kind of like push everything together. But then there's other elements going on, which again, I'm not going to say, but that adds a very interesting aspect. And you're just like, what? This is the thing. Everything's also twists and turns. And then we have lovely other side characters like Sil, who is just the sweetest, and she befriends Saph, and she is a big help in Saph's journey, and she's just so innocent and sweet and lovely and good, and like you can't, I tell you what, you cannot help but just fall in love with every single one of these characters, or if you can't love them, then you love to hate them. There is not one character in this series which is just meh. Everyone brings it. Stein writes such fully developed, layered, amazing characters, and they are all so different. Like, there is such a variety here. So you will find yourself relating to one of the sisters or one of the alphas, or, you know, one of the side characters. There's just no way that you can't, because they are all pretty much based on people that Stein knows and loves and cares for, as you'll hear in the interview, if you go and listen to it or watch it. You know, she's based the 5 sisters on herself and her 4 sisters, you know, so these characters are very real, and we can't help but get completely captured up in their stories, and it's magic. So we've kind of mentioned some of the themes already, mentioned about loss and grief, the journey that we go through when we're experiencing these deep emotions. So I'm not going to talk any more about that, but what I want to talk about is the theme of forgiveness. There is a lot of turmoil between characters. There are characters who have done abhorrent things, and some of the characters have a hard time forgiving, and other characters want to try and build bridges, and then there becomes the overriding thing of those 2 people who have opposing views then being angry at each other for those views, and then it becomes a thing about whether they can forgive each other and whether they can see from each other's perspectives, and that is a really big theme that runs throughout this book, and I'm quite certain that's probably going to crop up again because it's just such a human thing. You know, it's what makes us human is our ability to forgive, our ability to empathize, and it's definitely played into here because there is so much anger and so much angst swirling around in this book, and you have to take that moment to decide when enough is enough. When is it actually causing more damage to yourself than it is to the person that you're mad at, and what that anger is doing to you internally and mentally, and is it worth it? So that's a really interesting aspect about this book that we've not really looked at before too much. And also as well, like having that unconditional love that the sisters have, and Pearl treats them horribly. You know, she lashes out at them, she blames them, she, you know, it's really so easy for us to stay mad at someone when they've treated us that way. And of course we have patience, and of course we, you know, we empathize and things, but sometimes it does get to a point where enough is enough. And again, we see those types of themes being raised within this book. And the thing is with sisters and sisterhood, especially ones as tight as this one is that they still find that strength to love unconditionally, and some find it easier than others, and there are definite rifts between particular sisters and Saph, but you know, she is really struggling with this grief, and when it counts they still all come through, and it's just such a wonderful representation of that unconditional love between family, between women, between sisters, you know. Other themes. So we really take a dark turn in this book, not just because of Saph's loss, but because I'm trying not to spoil things, but we have a new villain, and he is kind of tied in with the previous book's villain, but he has his own agenda, which is brutal, like awful. And again, it very much ties into things that happen in our real world. There is a supernatural element to the crimes that he's committing, but essentially what it boils down to is things that happen every day in this world, and it's abhorrent, it's awful, and it's a terrifying thing. So the fact that we are delving into this real dark, seedy underworld of this universe is really interesting. I love dark literature, so for me this is very exciting, and I am in equal parts excited and terrified to see where this goes. And yeah, yeah, it's all very exciting though in different ways. It is all very exciting, but it's definitely, whatever happens in this book, it's definitely not something that we're saying goodbye to just yet. And yeah, yeah, that's all I want to say about it. But also as well, what else we got? So we've got, we also have as well, like, I think the theme of sacrifice, the greater good. Hot Fuzz reference for you there. But we have all of these positive things, but also like just thinking about the bigger picture beyond yourself. And this is something that unfortunately these characters have to deal with all the time. They have to put their own wants and needs to the side to think about what's best for the pack, to think about what's best for their families, to think about what's best for their race. And it's not always easy, obviously. And this book, sort of continuing on from the darkness that sort of raises its head in this book, like more so than in the other books, this book is not afraid to go to some really brave places. There is all kinds of peril that you don't necessarily expect. And it definitely, you feel a shift with this book in terms of tone. And from my understanding, it's only going to sort of go darker and darker and deeper down this rabbit hole. So I, for one, am very excited. And it also attests to how well of a writer J.N. Stein is, because she understands that you can't just keep churning out the same sort of formula. And whilst there is absolute differences between fearing fate and rejecting fate, the first and second books of this series, there is even by the second book, there is a sense of familiarity, and partly it's because we are following a lot of the same characters, but it does sort of follow a very similar kind of, what's the word, sort of formula, but the formula completely breaks in this one, and it sort of leaves you feeling a bit uneasy, because you're like, oh, this is new, this isn't what we've had before. But it's great, and it's exactly what's needed at this point of the series, and I can't wait to just sort of see how things turn out and how outside of the box this series goes. Yeah, it's really good. So as you can imagine, with this being a werewolf series, the setting is very important. There is lots of different wilderness landscapes, there's mountains, there's forests, all the stuff that I love. They always live just outside of civilization because they have their own rules. They also, for obvious reasons, they have very different lifestyles. And what's really interesting is how each pack is almost like a military base, some more so than others, but the way that they operate, they have like a warrior team, they have like a security team, they have an intelligence team. It's very militant, it's very like army like, and they all work together as a unit, that each one has their certain roles. They have sort of subdivisions of leadership. You've got the alpha, you've got the beta, you've got all of that. And they're all linked. They have mind links. So when you're part of a pack, you are mind linked to everyone else. So you can just talk to each other telepathically, which is a really cool thing. And yeah, it's very sort of like militant in that way. And also as well, like the military, it's very much like, a family. you know, you have these unique experiences that nobody else really can relate to, and it bonds you as such. So that all very much comes into play. And, you know, J.N. Stein, she is in the army. So she pulls, again, a lot from her own experiences, which is why I just think that these books work so well, because it's, obviously they're not true stories or anything, but, you know, there are aspects that are based on real knowledge from its author. So it comes off as very authentic. And it's really interesting when you see all of these different packs kind of come together and the alphas like butting heads and, you know, the betas all being broy and things, but like, it's very fun. And, you know, each book we kind of collect a new pack, you know, because the Stone Sisters always end up being fated to an alpha. And like, so each one we meet a new pack, and then the alphas all kind of work together against this, like, you know, common enemy. But it makes for quite a lot of humor. There's a lot of banter. There's a lot of sort of like soft rivalry. And it just works really well. And then you have, as I said, you have this backdrop of rivers and forests and mountains and all the kind of imagery that you relate to werewolves being out in nature, and the way that they utilize their surroundings. So again, it's very tactical. So, you know, in the Red Mountain pack in this book, they're surrounded by mountains, and so it sort of shelters them, and it makes for like good vantage points and things. So yeah, they have like, again, nothing is done by accident. Everything is by design with J.N. Stein. So that translates into the way that the packs are organized. Everything is for a reason. Nothing is really by accident. There are very particular things and reasons for every decision made. So yeah, it's a very symbiotic and relaxed and beautiful sort of setting, and sort of the makeup of these packs, which just juxtaposes wonderfully with the chaos that happens in these books. You know, it's just like, oh, this is so nice. This is lovely. Oh God, that sounds gorgeous. And you're just envisioning it in your mind, and, you know, you can see everything so clearly, and oh, yeah, someone's getting shot at. Brilliant. Oh, great. There were some wolves just, you know, chewing on each other's necks. Fantastic. So yeah, that's, that always kind of like makes me laugh a little bit, but I'm very quickly taken over by the action that's happening, and I get completely drawn back into all the action and drama. So I don't get to sort of relish the surroundings for too long, but I am not complaining, because the drama and the action that happens in these books are really fucking good. So yeah, it's difficult to talk about, because where this is like the third one in the series, there's lots of history, but it's not in this book. And so I don't want to talk about the other books, because I'm focusing on this book, and I don't want to reveal too much either. So it's kind of like trying to find things to sort of discuss that are non-spoiler is a bit tricky. However, I do hope that this has whet your appetite. I do hope that there is something that I've said that intrigues you, because these books, these characters, this writing is absolutely worth your time. It is worth the money spent on it. You can get it at Amazon and Kindle Unlimited. And I just... these books excite me. They really excite me. And I just want everyone to read them. So the next book, Finding Fate. It's like trying to keep track of all the names and the characters. Finding Fate, that is in the works. You can get chapter uploads as they are released through Ream, REAM. And I think it's Aria, yeah. And you can follow JN Stein on Instagram, and she's not on TikTok, but you can follow her on Instagram, and she's very active on there. I thoroughly suggest that you check out the interview. It was so much fun. JN Stein is just such a wonderful person. We've really got to know each other over the last couple of months since I started her books. And she's just so genuine and so sweet and just the loveliest person, very funny. She has a wicked sense of humor. And yeah, just go follow her, go check out the interview, go check out the books. And yeah, please drop a comment, let me know what you think. Go and rate and review it, and also as well, just any books, especially indie books that you read and enjoy, go rate and review them. You have no idea how important that is for authors. It really does so much good. And while you're at it, give me a rating and a review. Thanks. And you can check my social medias out. So I am on Facebook, under Kate Anjou's book reviews. You can check me out on TikTok and Instagram under kate.anjous.book.reviews. Or you can email me at kateanjousbookreviews@outlook.com. Any feedback is always appreciated. If you would like to follow me, I do put out content fairly regularly. If you are listening to this show and you want to see the reviews and see the interviews, you can do so on YouTube under Kate Anjou's book reviews. Just sensing a theme here. And the episodes come out monthly. So yeah, plenty of ways to interact, as much or as little as you want to. But the most important thing is you go check out these books, you leave, you know, good ratings and reviews. Honest, don't pander, but you know, I can't see, at least with these books, I can't see anyone leaving a bad review, because they're just so good. They're just so good. So next episode, I'm going to be joined by Brian M. Sammons. He is a really good friend of mine and a fantastic author. He primarily writes cosmic horror. Very kind of Lovecraftian and dark. He is also an editor, and he has a great passion for things like Dungeons and Dragons and horror generally, and is a podcaster, and he really has his fingers in many pies, but we will be discussing his writing. So I'm really excited for him to come on. I'm so excited to introduce you to him, and I know that we're going to have a really great time. So thank you very much for checking out this episode. If you haven't already, check out the interview with JN Stein, go check out her social medias, and as I said, most importantly, go check out her books. Choosing Fate and its predecessors, Rejecting Fate and Fearing Fate, are all available on Amazon and Kindle Unlimited. And her new book, Finding Fate, is available chapter by chapter as they go on Ream. And the full edition will be available in, I think, October. But as I said, it will say on the interview, just go double check that. And yeah, thanks very much. I'll see you next time. Bye. Hi, and welcome to Kate Anjou's Book Reviews, the place where we shine a light on indie books and their authors. Today, I have the incredible J.N. Stein, author of the Stone Sister series, and lots of wonderful things within it. Thank you so much for coming on. How are you doing?
Hi, good evening. I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I am good, yeah. Very excited to discuss this book. The book we're discussing today is Choosing Fate. It's the third one of the Stone Sister series. So I would say that if you haven't read the other books, because we will probably touch on the other books, we just naturally, because it's a follow-on story. So I would say if you haven't read the other books, they are available on Amazon and KU. So pause, read them, come back. But the discussion of Choosing Fate will be spoiler free, so don't worry if you haven't got around to that one just yet, because it has only just been released. But yeah, so Choosing Fate, it follows Saph, or Sapphire, Stone, of the Sisterhood, and also Asher, the leader of the Red Mountain Pack. And as I said, we've kind of been following Saph's story a little bit through the other books and the other sisters' POVs. And now we are finally getting a focus piece. So normally what I do with these interviews is I ask my author just to let our listeners and watchers know a little bit about you, and then also just give like a brief kind of synopsis of the story.
Okay, yeah. So, hi everyone. My name is J.N. Stein, and I am a newer indie author where I focus on writing. My series is the Stone Sisters series, and it's got 3 completed books so far, starting with Fearing Fate, then Rejecting Fate, and now Choosing Fate is the most recent one. And look at those books highlighted in the background. For anybody listening only, there's the books highlighted in the background. And the stories and the series follows 5 sisters who are werewolves, whose father was an alpha of a pack. But while they were young and before the story even really starts, I tell the story of how there was a fated mate plague that killed off thousands and thousands of werewolves all over the world, because it basically kills any werewolf that has a fated mate and found their fated mate. And once it kills one werewolf in the mated pair, it is most likely going to kill the other mate in the pair, either through the plague itself or through the pain of loss and grief or whatnot. And so all over the world, werewolves are dying, and there's pandemonium and chaos. And so the Stone sisters, their father, Alfred Bronson Stone, he had already lost his wife, the sister's mother. And he had made plans in an effort to protect his daughters, because he knew his death was imminent, he decided to send them off to different corners in the United States, because that's where they live. And they were going to be taken care of by different pack members that their father trusted. And they all spent their entire childhoods living apart from each other, growing up in different areas, but keeping in touch, because it takes place in modern times. And then about 12 years later, they finally make the decision to try and reunite in the first sister's book, in Diamond's book. And my books all focus on strong female characters. It's paranormal. There's definitely some romance in it in terms of like steam and spice, but I really focus on the strength in the female leads, complex characters, a little bit of plot twists, emotional roller coasters. That's what I really try to focus on in my book. So if you were into those like general tropes and then much more, maybe a little bit of like some dark humor and some sarcastic humor, that's definitely in there a lot as well. So if that's what you're looking for, that's what you will find in my books.
No, that's a very good way of describing it. Yeah, emotional roller coaster. I'll tell you what, the voice notes that I've sent you, just like pure rage when things. I'm like, how could you? You know, I'm like crying here. You made me feel things. You know, so yeah, I would 100% agree with that description there for sure. So at the beginning of this book, Saph has dealt with a lot of grief. She suffered the loss of her chosen mate, Nathan, R.I.P. And she's not in the best. Is it fair to say that she's sort of in the anger part of the grieving process?
Yeah, I think it's safe to say she's somewhere in between like anger and denial at this point in her loss. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. And like with this story, I think this story deals with grief the most. It's not just her, there's other characters that have gone through that whole thing. And, you know, grief is a common theme with this book because of the fated mate's plague. And, you know, and having someone being like ripped from your life unexpectedly and something that you never thought would happen. So what was that like, right? Like going into a book with a character that is in the middle of going through so much. When we've met the other characters, they were kind of fairly fresh and they're kind of at the beginning of their story, whereas Saph's kind of like partway through her story already. What was that like for you?
Yeah, so I definitely wanted to use Saph's story as a way to highlight the complexities of loss and grief because, like you mentioned, Kate, the series deals with a lot of loss for a lot of characters because the prelude to this series is that there was a fated mate plague that killed so many werewolves all over the world, and so many people were dealing with the loss of loved ones and family members and friends. But there hasn't been a character yet that's been like the main focus of what the loss process has really felt like, or to follow a character as they really experience like death and grief firsthand. Like we get like some snippets of backstories, and I talk about other characters and their experiences, but they've more or less processed their loss and are on the other end of it at this point for the most part. And Saph is not. Saph is, and I really wanted to highlight the beauty of grief, and that it's not pretty, and that it's not just a simple like the person is gone, you have like it's been a few weeks, a few months, and you should be good now. Like loss is normal. Like, why aren't you okay? And so, yeah, I really just wanted to show the human aspect of loss and grief with Saph's book, and really shine a light on the normalcy of there's no timeline for getting over a loss of somebody. So that's what my goal was for the book of Choosing Fate.
Yeah, no, definitely. So the first two books are pretty kind of light reading. They have their dark aspects, sure. But like in Choosing Fate, this new one, like we really do start to see like dark elements really coming through, more so than the others. Like I would say, like even as I said, like even our female main character, like she has this very fresh trauma compared to the other female leads that we've met so far. Like they have, obviously they've suffered loss from like their family and things, been separated, but like generally like their lives have been pretty enriched. They've made their families within the packs that they were sent to. They've got friends, they are excelling, they have their own strengths. As you say, like, these characters, they're so strong. And there's usually like a bit of levity in those books, whereas this one there's nothing like that. When we go straight into this character who is just so withdrawn, and as the story goes on, like we see, I'm not gonna like spoil it or anything, but like we do see that there is some very dark subject matter coming through in terms of like our villains and their agendas and their methods of achieving those agendas. And so is that the kind of like direction that we're going to see escalate through this series as it continues?
Yeah, so the series, so Fearing Fate, the first book, like you said, Kate, all the books have like darker themes and elements in them. So there are trigger warnings for all of my books. Or as I like to name it in my books, like, reader, be mindful. There might be some moments throughout the books that you might not even be aware of could be triggering to you, and I just want you to enjoy the book. But there are darker themes within the book because life is dark, and I tried to write with a sense of realism as well. But definitely in Sapphire's book and Saph's book, I think I start with the dark themes pretty quickly because, like we're saying, her character is just freshly dealing with like the loss of a partner, and she hasn't found a way to cope with that loss yet, or not effectively. And her family, her sisters and friends also don't know how to help her because they haven't experienced loss in this way yet or at all. So they don't know how to help her. She doesn't know how to help herself. And I think she was the perfect character to do this with, because in the first two books, her character is the most optimistic, or one of the most optimistic and light and hopeful of the sisters. And then she just takes a sharp turn to dark town. And it was definitely, I don't want to say fun, but it was definitely an enjoyable experience to explore that mentality shift for her.
No, definitely. And I think, as well, like it's not just even a loss of a partner, but it's a loss of her best friend. They've been best friends since they were tiny, like, since she first moved to the pack. And she's one of the youngest out of the sisters. So, it's not just losing a partner, it's losing a best friend, it's losing a confidant, it's losing, your constant. And within that as well, like as a result, losing a part of yourself, as you say, she's such a sunny, vibrant character in these other books. And then suddenly there's no hope, there's no, anything. And she basically says, like, I'm just not that person anymore. She's not
Yeah.
coming back. I don't care about anything. I used to love gardening. I used to love this, and none of it means anything to me anymore, because what's the point? And I think that's the hardest thing for her sisters, is not only just knowing how to help someone who's grieving in such a way, but they are also suffering a loss of their sunny, vibrant sister, you know, who doesn't seem to be there anymore. And I think that grief is just such a complex emotion, and there's so many different aspects. There's where, you know, the 5 stages of grief, and it's, you know, it does look different for different people and different circumstances, sure, like it's not just like a set thing. And that's, I think, is what makes it so hard, is that there's no set way of dealing with it. And I think you explore that so wonderfully here. Yeah, no, and I you know, I said to you off air, like, one of the things that really shines through for your books is, although it's set in this sort of like paranormal existence, like it's in our world, but there's this sort of, you know, it's not our world, you know.
Yeah, it's a parallel universe within the
yeah, exactly. You know, kind of like True Blood's in our world, but it's not, you know. And it's, you know, they obviously dealing with things like werewolves and witches and all this kind of stuff that obviously doesn't exist in our world, but the core of the story is about very relatable things, and the darkness that comes from your books are things that happen in this world, and they are horrific things that happen in our world that we don't like to talk about, we don't like to think about. And so I think that, you know, the contrast within, you know, the kind of the levity that your books have as a general energy, it's such a juxtaposition when you're then forced to look into the horrors that, you know, people, whether or not they're human or vampire or werewolf or whatever, you know, that people can do to each other. And I think that that is paralleled in Saph's journey. This, you know, this very happy, life-loving person who suddenly has no emotion about anything whatsoever, apart from deep hurt. Yeah, I just think it's so wonderfully written. And then, you know, as she starts to come out, like, you know, again, I don't want to sort of say, but, you know, she doesn't just have this one, you know, it wouldn't be an interesting story if she was just this one, like, angry, frustrated, you know. And it's like, and it's like, again, I remember voice noting you and just being like, I really just don't like her. Am I supposed to, like, you know?
Yeah, you're not supposed to like her. Her family didn't even like her at the beginning of the book, because they were at their wits' end with her either. So I cracked up when you sent me that voice note, because you were like, I really don't like Saph right now. And I said, good, you're not supposed to.
I was so relieved when you said that, because I was like, I love every single one of your characters, and they're all so different, but they're also lovable in their own way. And I was like, I'm not used to this. Yeah. Yeah. So we're gonna say,
I think that's I wanted to play around with that idea of like Saph being like repelling in her process of growth and grieving, because I think that's an aspect of grief that I haven't read a lot of in other books, that like when there's a loss, like, you know, people go through the 5 stages of grief pretty quickly in other books. And I really wanted to really show it and like paint that picture with Saph, and that it's not always perfectly linear. Sometimes you regress a little bit. It's somewhat cyclical at times. And there are times when like you're grieving and like you're angry, but you are really angry at like something that's not tangible. So the only way to express your anger is at the people closest to you. And you push them away because you don't know how to ask for help. You don't know how to express like why you're frustrated or why you're sad. And I think like I really tried to paint that picture with Saph. And so when you said that, I was like, oh, I did it. I did it. I made me feel so mad at her, because that makes it harder to help the people who are hurting, because you're like, they're being a total asshole right now. They're being a total asshole right now. I don't want to help them. It's like, yeah, and that's what grief will do to people. It'll make you withdraw even more, and it'll cause people to pull away from you even more. And then it just confirms that you're in it alone.
I think you do such a good job with that. And even when, as I say, she starts to kind of like come out and things, she, as you say, she has these moments where she feels extreme guilt, and then she kind of draws back, and it's as you say, it's not linear. This is a battle that she is constantly fighting. As you say, it's not just, you know, oh, I'm sad and now I'm happy. Throughout the whole book, she is battling with herself about what she wants, what she feels she should want, what she feels like she should feel even, and like, you know, and guilt for how she's treated people, guilt for, you know, the things that she's doing now. And it's, yeah, she's definitely had one of the most complex journeys of the sisters so far. And I think that's just like a real testament to your writing and your understanding of the human nature, for sure. No, definitely. So what I found is so prevalent in these books is like the idea of family, and like not just like blood relatives, but also this idea of chosen family. You know, we have chosen mates, you know, so there's fated mates, as you've mentioned, where it's like, so there's the moon goddess, who is essentially this all-powerful deity, and she is very much like, yeah, the idea of fate, and you're supposed to be with this person and everything. And I can't remember if you mentioned it, but like fated mates after the plague just never happened. Like it died out.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden fated mates start like slowly but surely kind of coming into play again, much to the confusion of everyone.
Right. Yeah. And it's a generation that's never seen fated mates, or at least barely remembers them, and so they don't know what to expect.
No, exactly. They've not had anyone to be able to really tell them what it feels like, what you to expect or anything, because it's been like 30 years between like the last one and the newest one. So what people have been doing is they've been choosing them. It's like, you know, you choose a partner in real life, you know, but like they mark each other, because the fated mates will bite each other's necks as like a claim, like, this is my partner.
Right.
Like polygamy is not really a thing in werewolves. But
not in the books right now. Not in the books right
now. Oh, okay. But yeah, so, and then you know, so you have your chosen mates, so they still mark each other, but it's not in the same way. But like, you know, it doesn't mean that their love is any less genuine. And that's what Nathan and Sapphire were like. They were each other's chosen mates. So you have this idea of people who you choose to bring in your life. Then obviously you had the sisters who were separated when they were very young, and they all had to make new bonds in their packs. And you have like characters like Dyer and Sage, and things. But then you also very much have, you know, this sisterhood. You've got brothers and sisters. You've got like, you know, family of like alphas and things. So there's a lot of different types of family in this book, and you know, I feel like a lot of them, especially because we focus around these 5 sisters, a lot of them are very kind of like female presenting relationships, you know, like we do have the fated mates and the chosen mates and things as well, which I think so far have been heterosexual, but we have, you know, sorry.
Not long. Little teaser.
Okay.
Books and stories will have some other types of non-heterosexual relationships.
Okay, I look forward to it. But yeah, so like you have, you know, you have this idea of like sisterhood and sisterhood between friends as well, and things. So like, I guess just like, how important is that representation to you, and like, and why did you decide to make that such a theme, you know?
Yeah. Oh, I love this question. So one of the first things that I think people learn when it comes to writing is you write what you know. And I have 4 sisters in real life. So the 5 Stone sisters are very loosely based on my 4 sisters and myself. And that was probably the easiest thing for me to start writing, is like the relationship and the dynamics of a lot of sisters and the different types of personalities that exist between many siblings. And then honestly, as I started writing the first book, I just realized like a sub theme for me, or a subplot, maybe it's even a trope in itself, is just, I feel like a lot of werewolf and paranormal books focus on the fated mate bond. And I really wanted to focus on family bonds because I feel like that's just as important. And I didn't want these characters to only be defined by their quest for love, because up until like later in the first book, none of them really thought or believed that there would be fated mates ever again. So they had to rely on the strength of their friendships or their found families and whatever family bonds that they had left that survived the plague. So a lot of sub themes that are woven into my books are these different relationships that people have, and the strength and the interactions between these different characters and their siblings and their friends. And I think that's also what helps people fall in love with these characters. It's not just like they're, oh my God, they're just like, I want them to find love. But it's like, I want them to make up with their sister. I want them to have a better relationship with their brother or their friend. And that's what I hope people are also rooting for.
Yeah, I definitely am when I'm reading it. Like, you know, every single relationship is important to me when I read these books. And I think it's great that you don't just focus on like the romantic aspect. These characters are not defined by one thing, you know, and just going to hark back to Rejecting Fate is one that like I really related to, and we've spoken about it, and it isn't really a spoiler or anything, but Emmy, the sister that we're focusing on that book, you know, she has a lot of body image issues. She isn't very confident. She isn't a very sociable person. She doesn't really know how to deal with people in a way. Like, she's just very kind of insular. Like, she knows her strengths. She's very, very smart. She's strategic, you know, and she has these goals and these ambitions that are away from the pack, away from this werewolf life, and, you know, trying to find her place within that. And she keeps getting kind of like clawed back into what happens. And, you know, and then she suddenly finds these emotions for, you know, one of the other characters, but her insecurities kind of like draw her back. And not just because of her body image, but she's had, you know, awful things happen to her in the past. And, you know, you could have so easily made it about one thing or another, but like all of your characters, she's so multifaceted. And, you know, I think is a very easy thing to do, especially like within romantasy, you know, because people do love romance, people do love smart and want to, you know, just get lost in the kind of oof of it all. And that's great. Like, I mean, if that's all you're looking for, then fine. That's not me snubbing, but for me, and I think a lot of readers, it's not enough. You know, like, I get very frustrated with books when there's just tons of sex thrown in and there's no character plot, like no character arc or no plot or anything that makes that character unique. And so while you do have a lot of romance, and there is definitely some sauce going on up in that mix, for sure. Like, but that is like by far not the only thing going on with these characters or in the book. There is way more things going on that are at stake, and that is absolutely true. In fact, I think that Choosing Fate probably has the least amount of smut and romance in it, because we're in the third book now. You know, this is really driving, and we kind of came to an end of a chapter, no pun intended. At the end of Choosing Fate, there was like, you know, things that happened where it kind of like we said goodbye to some characters, some things happened which kind of sort of, you know, ended that particular narrative. But then there's these offshoots of other narratives that come into Choosing Fate. Rejecting Fate is when that happens. Sorry, and the titles mixed up, sorry. So Rejecting Fate, we've said goodbye to some stuff and there's some things being closed off, but in Choosing Fate there's some offshoots from what's happened in the previous books that really come into play here. And it goes down, as I say, this very kind of like dark narrative, and that's like very much the focus. And things like forgiveness. Forgiveness is also a really big theme in this book.
It is, yeah. And I'm actually, so if you were looking for a fast burn, Choosing Fate is not a fast burn. You really have to earn the spice.
Yes.
In the book. But I was pretty intentional about that because there were definitely parts when I was drafting this book where I was like, I could probably put in a little bit more spice earlier in the book. I could turn this scene up a little bit more. But I'm also, not that I'm not a fan, but I didn't think it would be realistic for Saph's journey to cope with her grief through sex.
Yeah.
I don't think it would have been realistic and believable for her character to do that. I toyed with the idea, and then as I kept developing her character and writing the book, I'm like, her coping with sex just doesn't fit her character's story. And so you have to wait. She waits. Her partner waits. Like, everybody waits. But I feel like when the spice hits, it hits.
Yeah.
So if you're willing to wait, it's
yeah. I mean, who doesn't love delayed gratification, right?
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think that that's absolutely right. I think that it would have been wrong for Saph to deal with it in that way. That's, you know, it is how some people deal with stuff,
Sure.
but that's not Saph's character. And as well, Saph has been with one person, like her whole life. She's not the kind of person to just hook up or whatever. Like she really has intimacy with that, as she does. It's not frivolous for her. It's, you know, it's more than just about getting a happy, you know, and she has to really connect. And she, and the complexity of her grief, I just don't think she would, it wouldn't be, if she did it earlier, unless you were just going to completely like lose sight of who she is at her core, it wouldn't be an enjoyable thing. And it would ruin, there's no way that she could come back from that, I don't think, and we wouldn't be given the reward of what happens down the end, you know?
Right. Yeah. Again, like, could it have been possible for her character to like have sex with somebody, or like her, or Asher, like earlier in the book? Absolutely. But I also don't think Asher's character, if that was what I was going to write, Asher's character probably wouldn't have allowed it based on like how he is. And so that would mean Saph would have to have like been promiscuous with somebody else. And like, I thought about it, I considered it as a plot point originally when I was drafting the book, like Saph maybe becomes a little promiscuous because that would be a 180 from her character. But it just didn't feel genuine to her character's arc and her storyline. So I left that out. So yeah, I'm very happy with what her character does throughout the book and how it ends. I'm happy.
Yeah, I think that you're absolutely right. And like, as well, like, you're right about Asher. He's a very he's got a lot of integrity. He's a very respectful person. He's also very disciplined, and you know, we see that in lots of different ways. So, you know, it would be out of his character as well. And I also as well would think that it would make him dislikable, like, or unlikable rather, because it would be taking advantage, and it would be very kind of dubious, and not in a fun, you know, dubcon kind of way that you get in like romance, dark romance and things, but just like, it would actually just not be ethical. And we would find it, I mean, I know I would find it very difficult to get back on his side if that happened. And actually, this is a thing as well that like I wanted to talk to you about, because the whole idea of fated mates is kind of, it in itself is almost a bit dubious, because it's like, would you get with these people, would you fall in love with these people if it wasn't for this like pull that essentially comes from their inner wolves, that, you know, is out of their control almost. And you find, as the book goes on, there are like characters that they would never dream of getting with each other, and that in itself is a journey. And I wanted to get your sort of thoughts on that, because that's something that is brought up in this book. And I was actually really kind of like grateful for it, because as much as I can kind of like, well, it's just, you know, there are, you know, it was kind of in the back of my mind of like, how like this kind of like idea of fated mates is very romantic, but like the kind of core of it is like, it kind of, you lose it's almost like you lose your consent, because you can't overcome this drive. And if you try to, then the alternative is essentially death, you know? So I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that was so what got me into as a reader of paranormal romance was I've like before I read any of these books, like I didn't even know anything about werewolves or whatnot. I think I maybe watched one of the Twilight movies and I didn't get never read any of the books. Nothing against it. It just at the time it didn't click with me. So I didn't really know anything
Yeah,
about the
you're
world.
better for werewolf lore. I can send you over a
A
bunch.
deep dive as a reader, and I just got I fell in love with the idea of like these fated mates, and I love that concept because I think I am like a romantic at heart, and I do love the idea of like a soulmate. Um, but I also like the idea of you choose your soulmate. Like love isn't just something that happens organically all the time. It's something that you constantly work at and you choose to love a person every day, even if you don't like them. Like I feel like that's the core of like truly loving someone. And so this idea of like in werewolf lore, or at least in a lot of paranormal romance is like, yeah, there's fated mates and like you just feel this strong magnetic pull and you're just supposed to immediately feel love. And I don't, and I really try hard to write in my books that like the characters don't feel love. They definitely feel the pull and that connection from like an internal level, but mentally they don't know the person. They don't know, they might not even like the person. And so I really try and shed light, especially in Saph's book, is like she definitely feels some type of pull. Asher definitely feels some type of pull, but they're still negotiating their individual feelings for one another. And they both end up having to make a choice. Like, even if we're deemed to be a good match, do we agree that
Yeah.
we're a good match and that we complement each other and that we can be good for each other? And I love the idea of like, even though it might be fate, you still have a choice at the end of the day. And I really wanted to highlight that, not just in Saph's book, it's definitely highlighted in Saph's book, but in all the sisters' books, it's definitely highlighted.
Because I think even from the first go as well, like, you know, Daya's terrified of the plague and things, so she really fights her connection with Darius. And I think as well, like in real life, like you can be sexually attracted to someone who you just don't, you can despise, kind of thing.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
you know, and it's almost like hate sex, you know, which personally I don't understand. If I don't like someone, there's absolutely no way they're getting within an inch of me. But I know that that's a thing for some people. So
Sure.
it's like, you know, it does happen. And I just, I just wanted to ask you about it because I thought that was like an interesting sort of concept of this idea that kind of like, you know, the connection that you feel is kind of out of your hands, but then it, as you say, it is so much more complex than that. It's not just like, oh, a switch gets turned on and now I think you're awesome. And it's not, and even within this book, it's not even just Saph and Asher, there's other ones that up. And I won't say, but there was one I was like, is kind of hinted at before it's truly revealed. And I was like, and I messaged you about it. I was like, is that oh my god, like that is so messy, you know, like it's so messy. I mean,
But it makes sense by the end of the book. It makes sense.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And like, and it's, you know, it all kind of like pans out, but it's just kind of like, when I read it, I was just like, oh, popcorn, like I was like seeing how this is unfolding, because it's not even just these two characters, it's like all the people around them and like what their reactions are going to be. And oh my god, yeah, it was quite a trip. But yeah, no, cool, thank you for answering that, because I know it's a difficult question, but like I did want to just sort of like put that forward. Speaking of like relationships, and you know, you touched on family, we have a new family dynamic in this book as well. We have a parent.
Yes.
We've never had that before in these books. And not only is it a parent, it's a single father and a daughter. And I love Ruby.
Right.
She's a firecracker. And you know, she's a very little girl. She's 4. She is every bit 4 and then some. You know, if anyone has a daughter who's around that age, you'll know. But like it's such a beautiful dynamic and relationship that they have, and it's just their own little world. And I wondered, you know, because you don't have kids, and even if you did have kids, you're not a dad. You can't, you know. And I wondered sort of what was that like, writing those kind of characters? Like, did you come across any challenges? How did you deal with that?
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't have kids. I have dogs. That's not the same. And I'm not a father, and I don't have intentions of becoming a parent either. But I honestly, it was kind of like, I mean, I've read other books that have single dads or single parents in them, so it's not an uncommon like theme to read or plot to read. But I was actually the interactions between Asher and Ruby as father and daughter. I was trying to write them as like, if I was Ruby, what kind of relationship would I want to have like with my dad? And I had a pretty strong relationship with my dad growing up.
Yeah.
And so I tried pulling from that. And I also wanted to give like a very young child, like a strong voice too, and to show that like this dad was empowering his daughter to have like a strong will and a strong voice as
Yeah.
well. So, and I wanted it to be a fun relationship too. Like I wanted him to be like an equally strong and sensitive dad and
Yeah.
not just like a tough love type dad, just a very like sincere and like genuinely loving father. And she's like a genuinely like adorable kid.
Yeah.
So it was hard like to put it shortly, it was difficult because I didn't know if I was capturing the dynamic well. Um, so I'm glad you thought I did. And other
Oh,
readers who've read the book so far have also like felt the connection between them. So yay.
it's truly magical. And I mean that even that relationship doesn't come without its problems. They go through it too. But like it's just so wonderful, like bookies and cookies. Mm,
Girl,
it's
that's gotta be like I gotta hashtag that or something because so many people are like, I gotta start doing that.
I'm starting to do that with my little girl. And yeah, I mean, like, not to go too personal, but like me and my kid's dad a split. Like he's not like Asher, unfortunately, was widowed, but yeah, like but he's so involved and
Mhm.
like it's very even keel, like there's no animosity or anything, and like he is such a hands-on dad, like she is his world kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I really saw that sort of thing in Ruby and Asher, and just them having their own little things going on, and it was just such a beautiful like relationship to see. And because especially like with this book dealing with a lot of darkness, having those moments of joy and innocence, it was definitely like a really kind of like bit of like you could breathe, you know.
Yeah, and like coming back to what we were talking about earlier, again, a big like goal for me in these books is to touch on the power of like family bonds and family dynamics. So how can you talk about it without talking about the parent-child bond?
Yeah,
And so this was my opportunity to start him to like play with that relationship and that dynamic too. And it was a lot of fun. Ruby was so much fun to write. She was
she's
so
so funny. She takes no shit like at all. And yeah, she like yeah, she forgets nothing. And like yeah, and she is authentic for a kid that age. I mean, she's definitely precocious, but I would also argue that I mean, for example, um their pregnancies are a lot shorter, so it makes sense that their growth patterns are quicker
yeah,
a little bit as well. And I mean, if you really want to get technical with it, wolves and dogs have a much shorter lifespan than humans.
yeah,
It doesn't translate like that with our characters or anything, but it makes sense that she is precocious, that she is kind of wise beyond her years,
yeah,
especially with a dad like Asher, who, as you say, he's so uplifting, he's so empowering. Um,
hmm,
he doesn't bullshit her. He doesn't, I mean, he protects her, and he doesn't expose her to things unnecessarily, but he certainly doesn't try to pull any punches with her, and she sure as hell wouldn't let him, you
yeah,
know. And it's yeah, it's so lush. And I think as well, because we've met a lot of alphas.
hmm,
they are they have to be, they're tough. They have to kind of rule a little bit with an iron fist, like they're not they're not dictators or anything like that, they're not cruel or unfair, but like
for stern.
they're stern, they have to be. And so this is kind of like the first time that we've seen an alpha show a softer side when it's not been about their partner, you
Yeah,
know. um and there are so many different things about Asher that set him apart from the other alphas, and it's all kind of revealed as to why in this book through Ruby and his relationship with Ruby. And as I said, yes, it's truly magical. It's lovely, and I can't wait to see what else happens with Ruby and her dad and things. I know I'm gonna have to probably wait a bit because we're now on like a different sister's story, but
yeah, I'm already contemplating a Ruby spinoff. I'm contemplating it. I mean, like, how can you have a Stone Sisters series and then introduce a character named Ruby and not, right?
Well, said to you, right? Like, because all the sisters, we haven't said this, but all the sisters are named after precious gems. You've got Emerald, Diamond, Sapphire, Amethyst, and Pearl, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, and you don't do anything by accident.
I don't know.
There's nothing that's by accident, and like, it didn't take me very long to clock that either. So I was like, Ruby, that's a thing. You did that on purpose. What is this? And I still haven't worked it out. I'm still like, churning it through my mind, but I'm like, okay.
Yeah. So it's nothing's like drafted, or I don't even have a note down, but in the back of my mind, I have ideas churning for her, and I'm like, I mean, she's got to have a story. So it'll happen eventually.
Yeah, no, she's great. And for anyone who's just like, oh, I don't want to read about kids, trust this kid is, she's something else, I tell you. She's fucking great.
Yeah. I think it's because Ruby that Saph's also able to pull herself out of her grief. I think if it was just Asher, maybe, but I think because it's Asher and Ruby, their relationship and the two of them together really makes a difference for Saph in her journey. So
because I think that Ruby allows her to tap back into that joy without it being something that she feels like she has to do to make others happy. And then she also sees Asher in a completely different light to what she's had this perception of him. And it's an unfair perception because she really doesn't know the guy at all. And she's just, hurting and lashing out and wanting someone to blame. But, there's just no way that any woman, or at least any straight woman, isn't going to fall in love with this big tattered, like muscly brute of a guy who is like reading bedtime stories and having cookies with his 4-year-old girl. Like, I'm sorry, but I don't care how hard you think you are. I don't care how sad. There is not one woman on this fucking earth who's into men who isn't just going to be like, yeah, okay, about it.
Pink hair.
Yeah, he's got pink hair and he has cupcake tattoos. I mean, what's not to love?
Yeah, I so wanted to. And that was something else. I had so much fun playing around with Asher's character because, like you said, he's not like any other alpha. He's definitely tough, and he's like, he could be brutish if he needs to be. But, but his character is more like, I mean, the main trope within Saph and Asher's story is like grumpy meets sunshine, and Saph is the grumpy and Ash is the sunshine. So he's like the more lighthearted, like, sees the forest through the trees and sees the glass half full, and Sapphire's just like, everything sucks, I hate everything, and Ash is like, it's gonna be okay. And so he's got that mentality, but he's also, I relived my punk rock days through Asher's character also, because I'm like I'm a grown-up like punk rock emo kid, and I haven't really seen a lot of that in books either. Like, I've seen plenty of like alphas with lots of tattoos, and they're great. I like love it. But I really wanted to play around with like, I want a punk rock alpha. Like, I want somebody who's like into music, is like a little bit grunge, like, dyes his hair, has piercings, is alternative, and is also like a little bit more merciful compared to other alphas, and has a little bit more of like a forgiveness, errs on the side of forgiveness and second chances.
He's a very empathetic character. He's a very he has a hardness at his core, which is, I think, comes from being an alpha, and it's a necessity if you want to do that job well. But he doesn't let it overrule
his overall decision process. And I mean, he's my favorite alpha so far. Like, don't get me wrong, I love them all, but like, he's definitely like one, like he's the person who I could imagine being mates with. Like, not mates, but like friends with. No, although I wouldn't say no, but but like, you know, you could like sit back, you know, chill out in his office, put some music on, talk about how, you know, music's not like how it used to be back in the day, you know, and just, you know, and like have a really good time with it. And like
and then he'll play his guitar for you.
Yeah, right. My guitar. And yeah, like he does have this playfulness to him and this lightness to him, which I think is so important. And I think as well it's so important to him being a parent, because, you know, you don't want to bring that home to your family, you don't want to bring home that trauma and stress. And he's had a lot. And, you know, Ruby, she's had to grow up without a mother, and you know, there's enough in their lives without adding more. And I think that if you had a character like Vinny or Darius, for example, who, you know, is a little bit, you know, takes themselves a little bit more seriously, you know, it just wouldn't have that same dynamic. And as you said, I don't think Saph would get to where she ends up necessarily, or like definitely not, and I don't want to even say it's quick, because it's definitely not a quick journey, but like it would have taken even longer for her to get to that point, if she ever did. You know, and I would
fall for an asshole. Like, that's the thing. Like Darius in book 1, I wouldn't say he's like the asshole alpha, but he's like, I call him like the blue collar alpha, where he's a little bit more like rough around the edges. He's a little bit more like laid back, but definitely still like, you know, like punch first, ask questions later type guy. And then Vincenzo is like very intelligent, but takes himself very seriously and very tight. Like Saph wouldn't, like, she respects that, but she wouldn't be attracted to that. Like, she needs somebody who's a little bit more open with how they feel. And that's Asher, because Saph, that's what she originally had with her chosen mate. And she lost that ability after he died. So she needs somebody to help her rediscover that part of herself. And that was Asher.
Yeah, definitely. And because, you know, he's gone through his own loss for his chosen mate. They have that in common. They really, I mean, this is the thing with the moon goddess. Like, she knows what she's doing, because they really are just perfect for each other. They slot in each other. I was going to say they slot in each other's holes. That's not. They fill each other's gaps. Like, there's no way of saying this is that. Like, but they
need each other.
Yeah, they're the yin to the yang kind of thing. And you mentioned about the grumpy versus sunshine thing, and it's so often it's the girl who's like the sunshine and happy-go-lucky kind of thing, and then the guy's all gruff, and like it's a very interesting flip of that dynamic, whereas she's the grumpy one and he's the puppy, you know. He's such a puppy.
A little bit.
He's such a puppy.
A little bit. And I think that comes back to like my theme of like, I focus on strong female characters, so I want my female characters, the leads especially, to be the more complex of the pair. So if Saph stayed the sunshine, I don't want to say you can't be complex and be the sunshine, but I think it just adds that little twist to her character's journey to make her the grumpy. So yeah.
No, definitely. So side characters.
Yes.
So, this book and this series has some wonderful side characters. I mean, the world building here is fantastic. And each book has, you know, brings us a new pack, along with it new characters. There's so much opportunity to be playful. We also have new antagonists coming into this one, and they're, God, Jesus Christ, even more sadistic than what we're used to. I mean, that's saying something as well, you know. We're also as well, we're meeting people from outside of the States. Like, we've met Vincenzo and his sister, who originate from Italy, but like we've got an entire pack here who are Australian, you know, and that's just so far from, you know, anything that we've met before. They have a completely different outlook, a completely different way of being. And yeah, I guess just like, first of all, I want to ask, like, what is it like to write characters that are just from somewhere completely different? Like, and yeah, I think you are quite a well-traveled person, but just to kind of get in the mindset of someone who has a completely different culture to yours.
Yeah, I'm not as traveled as I'd like to be, But I do try to do my research, and so I stuck in my comfort zone with the first book, and I kept it set in America, and all the characters are from like the Northeast and stuff, because that's where I'm from. I'm from the Northeast in the United States, so it was a little. I was like, right, let me just stay like in my comfort zone for this first book, and then I'll branch out. And then the second book, yeah, let's bring in a pack from Italy. I've never been to Italy, but you know, there's the internet, and I did some reading and I did some research, and then I've also like asked people I know who've been to that part of the world or from that part of the world, like for their input when I'm like creating the characters. And honestly, I took a lot of inspiration from things that I just see online. So one of like Vincenzo's like character traits is he oftentimes will like confuse like American expressions, or he won't say them quite right. And there's a very I've seen like so many like Instagram posts and reels of like people who have international like partners from a different country, and they like give them like a common American expression, and then their partner's like, I don't know what that means, and because it just gets lost in translation. So I try to do those things. And then with Asher and his pack, like I've never been to Australia, met a couple people from that region. So I definitely will say, like, any readers that are from Australia, that region, please let me know if I did my if I did my characters right. And I really just wanted the readers that when they're reading the characters from different countries to hear that they're from somewhere different, and not because I know when I read, even if you tell me that a character's from a different country, egotistical perhaps, I just still read the character in my own
voice. Is what accent you have, isn't it? But I like to do this is so embarrassing, I shouldn't have said this, but I've started now. So I do a thing where like, and it's just being by myself, so like it's probably awful, but I'll read aloud the dialect, the dialogue rather, in that dialect. So I'll like, I mean, I won't do it because it's first person narrative, so I don't read the whole book aloud, but like when they're talking, I'll like, you know, I'll do that kind of thing sometimes, and that helps with me as well, because you can really kind of like sound it out. And I have this dumb thing, so I've got ADHD, and I have this really annoying thing of just imitating accents when I'm surrounded by it too much.
Yeah,
do you do that, right?
I do that too. I do too, and I try really hard not to. Like, you're speaking with a British accent, and I'm just like, I have a ticker tape in the back of my head right now being like, don't say okay.
You sound like you're from London. Yeah, no, like, and I was obsessed. I mean, I still listen to it now, but I heavily listened to this Australian podcast last year for a while, and I was just, I mean, I still say no. Oh no. Like,
yeah.
And I don't even realize that I do it. And for a while, last year I had people, like, if I met someone new, they'd be like, oh, are you from Australia? Or like, oh, have you just come back from Australia? And I'm like, no, I'm just a fucking idiot who listens to too much podcasts, basically, like, and just imitates accents and stuff. So I kind of can do some, they're not always good, but like if I concentrate in whatever, I can do accents. So like I'm sitting there going just like, oh, like, you know, whatever, and things. So I kind of like tried that, and it was made a lot easier because the writing was, you know, in that dialect, and yeah, and I'm excited because I know that I'm not going to say anything, but I know that there are other countries coming into play in your future work, so I'm very excited to see more of that.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Book 4, we're going to introduce characters from a variety of different backgrounds, and again, that's also something I'm not trying to be mindful of, but I wanted to do throughout the series is like show like diverse characters with unique backgrounds, different stories, different voices, because I want more readers to be able to find characters that they can identify with, that they can relate to. And so I'm really hoping that as the series builds, that's being accomplished as well.
Yeah, I love that. I think that is so important. And I think, you know, because write what you know, and you know, you were very much a writer. I mean, like, the more I've gotten to know you, the more I can see just how much of yourself and your lifestyle that you've put into these books. And I think it's very easy though to kind of stay within a certain what's the word, demographic.
Yeah.
And I think it takes a very brave writer to sort of stretch themselves outside of that. And, you know, I mean, there are writers who have been going on for years and years and years and, you know, are very, very well established and still don't do that. And anytime they try, they don't do a very good job of it, you know, and it's kind of a bit awkward. You know, so I think that, like, you know, I think it's great, you know, that you pull from people those genuine like ethnicities and cultural backgrounds and things as much as you can, and you research and, you know, you do all these things, and you don't just go off kind of like stereotypes, and you don't just go off, you know, things you've seen in films or whatever.
I try to approach my books with a certain level of like cultural competency and respect for other cultures, because I don't know what I don't know. So I do try to, you know, at first do no harm. I always try to like not make fun of any cultures or anything like that. And if that's going to happen in my books, it's done through a character, not necessarily from an author perspective. It's done.
No. And I think that, but I also think that that's perfectly okay, because unfortunately there are prejudices there's prejudice in the world. And I think that it's just as much of a story as anything else, is to reflect the prejudice that comes with having certain, you know, backgrounds and things. And, you know, as long as it's not any of my girls doing it, you know, like, fine. Like, you know, if it's some asshole fucking villain, then like, all right, fine, I'm supposed to hate you, you're supposed to be a fucking dickhead. So, you know, that's fine. And again, like, it's, you know, if you're going to be looking into different cultures and different backgrounds, there are going to be struggles in that, you know, if it's natural for the story and for characters to broach those things, then don't shy away from that either, because those things happen, and it's unfortunate and horrible, but it's genuine. It's genuine storytelling. So with like, so on the subject of side characters and things, like, we do have like quite a plethora. We have like these whole packs and things, and, you know, as much as I love the five sisters and I love their mates and things, like, these side characters are so juicy. And I think that's quite a common thing, isn't it? Because they don't necessarily have, like, we don't necessarily focus on like their trauma and stuff as much. And I'm definitely not saying that they don't have trauma, because you have to put your characters through it. You do. You are that writer that just makes you just want to hurl a fucking book, because you're just like, in the best way,
of course,
in the best way, but I'm just like,
and then you'll pick it right back up.
100%. But like, I just but they're also diverse. You know, you've got like really strong you know, fighters, you've got you know, cocky kind of sidekick characters, you've got very sweet, sincere characters, I mean, there's so many, like, it's very difficult to kind of like go into it in a non-spoilery interview kind of way, but just a very kind of straightforward question: who is your favorite side character, and are there ones that have either surprised you or challenged you particularly?
Ooh, okay, so that's a good question. And I think a few people have asked me this, and I don't want to say like I don't have a favorite. I think I can go by book. Who's my favorite book? Yeah, I think for readers in book one, Sage is definitely like a favorite side character who almost becomes main character, and will become main character in her own story. But I think for me, one of my favorite side characters in book one is Leslie Emberton.
Oh yeah, she's great.
She was one of my favorite side characters. She snuck up on me. I wasn't expecting to give her as much stage time in the sense, but her character, just as I wrote her character, I was like, oh, she's actually, there's a lot more I could do with her character. And so I really love her character, and you see a lot more of her character in book 4. So you'll see a lot more of her in book 4, which I'm really excited for. And then in book 2, I really enjoyed Renz. I know he wasn't a fan favorite, but I loved his character because he truly was like the Phantom, like just very misunderstood. I think everybody perceived him as the villain since the very beginning. And I really wanted to play around with this idea of like, you know, we misunderstand people so much. to the point where we don't even want to give them a chance to get to know them based on their first impressions. And some people are just horrible at first impressions and second impressions. Like, you have to really try to get to know them. And so Renz was, I think, one of my favorite side characters from book 2. And then in book 3, I think I'm gonna make myself cry. I really love Syl. I did. I really love Syl in book 3. She is such a great character, and I think it would be hard for many people who read book 3 to not love Syl. And her character just, I love Syl.
Yeah, I love Syl. Love Syl. Yeah, she's great. She really is great.
So in the 3rd book, I would have to say my favorite character is it's Syl, hands down. Yeah, her character, I don't feel like, again, there are certain characters where I don't think they get, like, I say screen time, maybe I should say like page time. Yeah. I'd say like Syl doesn't get like the most page time out of every side character or every character, but it's like the what she accomplishes in her brief snippets is it just makes her such a wonderful character, and she's a character that you're meant to love. So it's hard not to.
Yeah, no, you absolutely do love her, and she's and again, she's another part of Saph's sort of recovery, and she's so integral to that. And you know, it's kind of funny because she's almost the sunshine that Saph is missing, you know. Like, she's very optimistic, she's very happy, she doesn't push Saph to be any type of way. She's just like, all right, we're doing all right, that's what you're feeling today, that's what you're feeling today, that's all right, we'll do this instead, you know, kind of thing. And like, she's a really lovely character. And you know, for anyone who's watching or listening who hasn't read this book yet, who's going to, like, I really can't wait for my audience to get to know her, because she is really wonderful. And she's not in it loads, but as you say, when she is in it, like, they're very special moments.
And I think Syl's just got like that genuine authenticity. Like, she's so willing to be forthcoming and just share about herself. Like, she definitely reveals in the book that she doesn't have like a lot of friends, but she is eager to connect with people. And she and Saph have like a pretty quick connection. And to the point you made, I think Saph definitely sees the light in Syl that Saph once lost, or that she had. And and Syl is definitely integral to Saph's recovery. And it's just, I love their friendship. I loved writing their scenes together. They were fun. They were so fun. Syl is really like what Saph needed to make like a big leap at certain points in the book.
Yeah, I think so. And I think as well, it's very easy because Syl is obviously not in that situation. So for Saph, she doesn't have any association, like Syl doesn't associate with any of her pain. And so Saph is in a very kind of unique position where she can pose opinions and questions to her without it being deemed as confrontational or, you know, anything like that. And only someone of her disposition and her position like could do that. So yeah, as I say, she's very integral, and in so many other ways as well. So to this book. So love Syl. It's really great. My personal favorite, as you know, is Aurelian.
He was a sneaky side character. So many people love Aurelian, and I was not expecting that. My gosh.
Yeah, so I won't say, because it does allude to a big spoiler, but you know, for people who have read the book, you know, people who haven't read the book, just wait. Is all I'm saying.
Read it so that you can know.
Anytime he's on page, I get like excited. I get so excited. I'm just like,
he's such a wild card. He surprises me so much when I write him, because I really his character popped out to me. I wasn't necessarily, I didn't know how I'd write his character when I had the idea for his character. And then I started writing him, and I was like, okay, let's see where this goes. and I really didn't think readers would like him.
Oh no, he's great.
Readers would like him as much as they do, but every time somebody finishes reading book 1, Fearing Fate, because that's when he's introduced, they're all like, I love Aurelian. And I'm like, really? Okay. And then book 2, they're like, you brought Aurelian back. And I'm like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So
I think the way that I don't want to say too much, his character,
yeah,
I don't think we've ever seen before.
okay.
It's within werewolf like content.
Sure.
Like it's I mean I can't say to know every single book or film or anything of, you know, ever of werewolves. But from what I have read and seen, I've never seen his character before specifically. And I think it's so interesting. And he's just so interesting as a character, and he's so fun. He's not fun, but his character, like, it's fun reading him is what I mean.
He doesn't quite fit in. He doesn't quite fit in. And he knows it, but he's not trying to either.
No, he's not. He's really not.
Yeah, he's very unapologetic for how he is. And I think like seeing the dynamic between him and Tobias,
oh my God, it's so good.
like in like later books is just like, that's very funny. Like I really leaned into their dynamic, and it's just so fun to write their scenes together.
I love it so much. Oh my God. Okay, I'm not going to say anymore because I don't want to spoil anything, but I just...
If you're on the fence about reading this series, at the very minimum, read it for Aurelian. Honestly, Team Aurelian.
Yeah.
Swag with that now.
A t-shirt with that on. Work on it. So, what am I... Okay, cool. So those are all like the big questions. I have some like fun trivial questions.
Ooh, yes.
Sort of, like sort of quickish answers. So
okay, quick. Got it.
Well, it doesn't have to be quick, but like they're not
when I put my mind to it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm never concise for anything. I don't know if you've picked that, you know. So. Okay, first question.
Yes.
Most important. Out of all the questions I've asked tonight, this is the most important one. You ready?
Yes.
Which character do you fancy the most?
Ooh, do I fancy the most? I think Dr. Richard Santos.
He is a dark horse.
He is a dark horse.
Do you know who I envision? Do you know who I envision when I read him? I envision Hugh Dancy, who played Will in the Hannibal series.
Oh, yeah. It's pretty close.
That's who I imagine, like the kind of like geek chic, kind of like scruffy, exactly. Kind of like a Dr. Reed, like a Matthew Gray Goobler, Dr. Reed, Criminal Minds, kind of like the later seasons.
Mm-hmm.
Criminal Minds, not the early ones, but the later seasons, like that kind of vibe. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Anyways. Yeah. Okay, so if you could be a witch, vampire, or werewolf, what would you be?
Oh gosh, I think I'd be a werewolf. Yeah, I'm not even like I mean, my favorite animal is a penguin, but there's no were-penguins, and I don't think that'd be very cool, but werewolf for sure. I like the idea of becoming a wolf. Yeah.
I just had this image of like the penguins and just like people just transform, you know, like transformations of wolves in films are always really dramatic, and it's like teeth, and it's just been like
yeah, it's like the most awkward transition. It's like, hold on, I'm coming. And it's like they waddle slowly. Like that wouldn't be a good book.
I get you. Coming, I get you.
That wouldn't be a good book. We got to get these leopard seals. Like, I don't know.
Oh, that's so funny.
I think I'd be a werewolf.
Okay, cool. Which character, I think I already know the answer to this, but for our audience purposes, which character do you relate to the most?
So I'm an Amy. So of the Stone sisters, like I mentioned before, they're very loosely based off myself and my real life sisters. And Amy's character is most closely based off of me. So she's the fourth daughter in the birth order. I'm number 4 out of 5 between my sisters and I. She takes on a lot of my actual physical characteristics in real life. And then I think like her snarky sense of humor is pretty close to what mine is. So like the things that Amy says in the books, those are things that I've either really said or could see myself saying to people. So I'm Amy, and maybe a sprinkle of Sage, a little bit.
Nice. Yeah, I think I relate to Amy the most. Like I'm the same as you. Like when I'm reading, like I'd say that, I'd do that. And like, and what's funny as well is that her name is, you know, Amy for short, but her full name is Amethyst, and that's my birthstone. So
mine too.
Oh, are you Aquarius?
I am.
There's no wonder we go on. Tell you what.
Yeah. So it was a little self-serving naming her Amethyst as well. I was like, it's my favorite birthstone. I'll give her that. But I love I can't say like, I feel like a parent when they say like, I love all of my characters equally, or I love them all the same. I don't love them all the same, but I do have the same amount of love for each of them. But the type of love I have for them is different.
Yeah. I think, and also as well, I think if you can't be a little bit self-serving in your own books, then when can you, right?
Yeah.
All right. So who would you have play Saph and Asher if your books were adapted into film?
Oh, okay. So I actually thought about this because I am the worst at thinking about like celebrities that would play the characters, but I tried to think about this for Saph and Ash. So Saph would be who's Ryan Reynolds' wife?
Blake Lively.
Yeah, Blake Lively. Like her vibe.
Oh, okay.
Like kind of like beachy, kind of
like bohemian
bohemian. And then for Asher, I'm thinking like it's like a young Billy Idol type character.
Nice.
Like a young
looking kind of like, do you know, that's so funny because sorry, I had a bit of a brain jump in my mind. So young Billy Idol and stuff, like always, because the character Spike from Buffy bases his looks on Billy. Well, actually, according to the Buffy lore, Billy Idol copied his looks from Spike. And everything. But like, there were occasions where he reminded me of Spike, just that kind of like Spike when he's not all, you know, mournful and stuff, when he's like that kind of slightly cocky, like you said, like the punk rocker kind of thing. So yeah, if we're like going to throw the clocks back 30 years, we want to basically have James Masters play him.
Oh, there you go. Okay, yeah.
All right, nice. Yeah. I'm down with that.
Nice thing. Yeah.
You have my approval.
Okay. So again, a very interesting matchup.
yeah, not necessarily one that you would think we're putting together, but you know, here we are. They do. Okay, cool. So last question. If you could recommend your books based off the enjoyment of other books, so like if you like this, then you'll like my books, then which ones would you choose?
So I read mostly indie authors pretty exclusively. So I'll go based off of other indie authors that were very supportive and inspirational in me even taking the leap into writing. So I read a lot of CJ Primer. Okay. So she has like her whole like 6-pack series already complete. And she's such a fantastic writer and person. And then Moonlight Muse is another like indie author. She's based in the UK. She's based in England. And she has wonderful stories. And in terms of like world building and being like fantastical, like she's tops. Like she's definitely tops with it. So she's definitely someone I'm trying to like chase in terms of my skills in world building. So I'll leave I'll say those two right now. Like if you've heard of those authors in like the indie world, especially in paranormal romance, like they've definitely been very like influential and inspirational in my journey a lot. So I'll say them.
Nice. And also nice little shout out for more indie authors.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Oh, nice. I'll definitely have to check them out for sure. You have to DM me their
Oh yeah,
handles.
absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Nice. Cool. So yeah, that is all my questions. That's all our discussions.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, thank you so much. I had a great time, and good, I'm glad. And I guess just like last thing is pimp your stuff. Like, so all the 3 of these books so far are out on Amazon and Kindle Unlimited. So
Yes.
go get them.
Yeah.
And yeah, so just if you want to let people know where to find you on social media, if there's anything else that you want to sort of, you know, shout about, or any teasers, anything, go for it.
Okay. So I would say I'm on Instagram. So my author handle on Instagram is j.n.stein. So if you're on Instagram, give me a follow. I usually post pretty regularly about upcoming books, upcoming works. And I have a Facebook group called Jay and Stein's Stories. So you can find it, and we'll provide links for that as well. And then if you are the type of reader who likes to read books as they're being written, I also serialize my books before I put the finished book out on Amazon. So I'm on Ream, REAM. It's like a newer like platform for especially indie authors. It's really great. So you could find me on there, and I will be serializing my 4th book, Finding Fate. That's going to be coming out on Ream probably sometime towards the end of June, early July. And I'll also be putting a short story spinoff exclusively on Ream for the time being, which is based on some of the side characters that we were talking about, who just didn't get to have their stories wrapped up or didn't get to have as much spotlight time that we wanted. So I'm going to be focusing on those side characters in a completely spin-off short story novella series that I'm doing called Love 4 series. And it's going to focus on different side characters who we want to see get the love that they deserve in the main books that we didn't get to either finish seeing or didn't get to see at all. So if you love novellas and short stories, you can find those exclusively on Ream. They're going to start serializing this month. But you got to read the first couple books to know who the side characters are and to really appreciate their stories. So that's where I'm getting you.
Yeah, put in the work, but the work is fun, so it's not really work at all.
Yeah.
Awesome. Wow, yeah, great. I can't wait for the next one to come out. When is the next one coming out? Do you know?
So Finding Fate, if you're like me and you're a binge reader and you like to wait for the book to be finished because serializing books is just too much torture for you. And I will say, when I serialize my books on Ream, I reserve the right to make edits and changes based on how, like, sometimes I get a different idea as I'm writing it and I might make tweaks and changes. So the finished book for Finding Fate, I'm expecting to have that on Amazon, hopefully by October 2024. So
5 months.
Yeah. Well, so I'm hopefully no later than then, but I've already started writing it, and if I can maintain the pace I'm going and everything, it should be available in October 2024. If I can only be a full-time writer, but I have a full-time job and I'm in school full-time for my PhD. So I'm somehow balancing all that and finishing this series at the same time. So if you want to help me just become a full-time writer, buy my books, and recommend my books to more people.
5 months, like I'm not in your ARC team. Like, I'm going to read it before then. But like for anyone else, like, it's long 5 months. But read these books, get on, read the side series.
Yes.
And then hopefully October will come a little bit more quickly for you.
I know. It'll be there before we know it, right? It's almost June already.
Yeah, 100%. Cool. Well, yeah, as I said, thank you very, very much. And yeah, so if you want to follow me, I am on TikTok and Instagram under kate.orangejuice.book.reviews. I'm on, you should have heard the first couple of episodes. I mucked that up so many times. I'm also on Facebook under just Kate Orange Juice Book Reviews. You can also email me at kateorangejuicebookreviews@outlook.com. Please like, subscribe, follow, rate, review. All of it really helps, and it's not just helping me, it's helping people like Jen here and so many other authors that I get on the show and promote. The more that you rate and review, the more the word gets spread and these authors get supported. And it's just so important that we support the indie community, because there are some real gems out there, no pun intended. I do implore you, not for me, but for the indie community, just don't call me a hero.
I just wear a cape. Don't call me a hero. I just wear a cape.
I'm really joking. If anyone doesn't know, like, there's a Lonely Island song where they have that whole thing of like, don't call me a hero, and so that's what that was from. That was not me being facetious or anything. I swear to God. More like that. But yeah, so and then if you want to, if you're listening and you want to watch, you can find me on YouTube under Kate Onju's Book Reviews. And if you're watching but you fancy just listening or recommending to people who like to listen to podcasts, then I am found in Spotify, Apple, all your usual places. Just tap me in on Google or wherever, or on your platforms, and you will find me. Next month we are going to be delving into cosmic horror with a friend and indie author of mine. One is not an indie author of mine, he's a friend of mine, and he's also an indie author, called Brian Stammons. So that's going to be really exciting, and I'm very excited to get onto his book. He is a very intelligent writer and has a world of love of everything Lovecraftian and cosmic and horror and spooky stuff. Yeah, he's definitely one to watch. So join me next month for that. And in the meantime, just get on the socials, because I'll be putting updates and everything on there as well, and just general social media content and relatable things and whatnot. So yeah, thank you very much. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.